Hi, this is Sir Flobojan Thunderhammer.
And I'm King Cabbage Tidehammer.
And this is WAK. We got a couple of serious ones under our belt.
Slept with the king.
And you become the champion day one and walk out.
I'm surprised your beards didn't get Velcroed together.
Explain that. You have to explain.
I haven't a clue.
That's why.
Some sort of LARP thing. I survived that. I'm not going to murder you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to WAKed, where we discuss topics important to the Kingdom of Winter's Edge, interview the Amp Guard community at large, and talk with interesting people from around the foam fighting world. Man, I got that one in 2 weeks in a row.
I know. It gets better every time. Today we have with us Lord Eronim Faitzhand. Did I pronounce that correctly?
You did.
Fantastic. Thanks for coming on, man.
So,
well, it's a pleasure to be here.
tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do. You work for AIBOD, so the listeners should know, and I believe before we started you said you were from the Empire of the Iron Mountains, is that correct?
That is correct. I actually serve as AI's social media lead, which formerly included the now unofficial Facebook group. There's a lot of unofficial stuff going on, as well as the Facebook page that we do still run.
Is that like a big load off your shoulders, or is it just an extra thing you have to manage now?
It's a bit of both. I actually started as a mod for the group, became the lead mod, and then became the social media lead. So it's going to be something that's going to be relatively close to me. I'm still on good speaking terms with the entire mod team, and they can still come to me for questions, but I can't really do anything directive in nature, if that makes sense.
I mean, my heart goes out to both you, who was on the mod team, and anyone else who still works on that mod team. Dear God.
Well, so for some people in the kingdom that may not be aware, you said unofficial now. What's the story behind that? What happened?
So, unfortunately, there's some details with that I believe it would still be preferred that I not go into, but there were some concerns with potential legal ramifications involved in us running an official group. Just kind of leave it at that.
Sure. Is this a lot like Reddit, where you can't run your own sort of thing, and there's
right. So I can tell you what we discussed at Clan, because all of Clan is on YouTube, all 12 hours of it, if you are so bold as to watch it. Essentially, it comes down to we are liable both for what we censor from the page and for what we don't censor.
That makes sense.
And so it became a big issue of, how can we verify that the censoring that we're making are appropriate and unbiased? And there was a lot of question about it. And if you look, most other games don't have one central social media discussion page like we did. SCA doesn't. Most of them
a lot of other games, as I've understood it, don't have anything like that. They have a page where they report, like, this is an event, and you can't respond at all, right?
That's what the Amp Guard page is supposed to be. So we divested from it to avoid any legal concerns. Everything now is supposed to be unofficial. So it is the unofficial something page.
Well, allow me to clear up some nomenclature there, because both the group that is now unofficial and labeled as such does still exist, and then the page, and it is two separate entities.
I always get this wrong. I apologize. Please clear that up.
Yeah, so that is something that is different to know, because we do still have the page, and I'm actually going to be working on some documentation to make that a little easier to utilize, primarily for people wanting to get those announcements out. But the group is now unofficial.
Right.
Okay.
So it makes things a little interesting for people who don't necessarily know that differentiation exists.
Yeah, there's Amp Guard International, and then I believe the unofficial Amp Guardian community. Those are the two pages. Amp Guard International is the only official page, and that's where we'll give update.
So does this extend to, I know that there was a lot of subpages out there, like there was a rules clarification group, there was other things. Is this all-encompassing, or was it specific to our main chapter page? The main Amp Guard page?
Honestly, there's still some discussion going on as to whether those are going to have to end up going the same way. The rules clarification page actually does not fall under my purview specifically. That falls under the RRO, the Rules Representative Organizer. But there's still some ongoing stuff with that.
Yeah,
potentially. Like I don't want to necessarily lean anybody to think it's going either way. That call has not been made.
Right.
Eagle-eyed listeners will notice that this started out as WAK and AmpGuard podcast, and I very quickly realized, oh shit, it can't be officially. So I changed it to WAK a LARP podcast for that exact reason. I realized very quickly, I was like, oh yeah, I can't.
Oh, yeah,
I'm on the ICOM. I have to change that.
Yeah, my name, for a decade or more was
Flow AmpGuard.
Flow
Yeah.
AmpGuard, and it had to be changed. And I hadn't thought about it at the time, even when we were going through, the various disputes with whomever that was that we were going through the dispute with. It never occurred to me. And then when it got flagged and said I changed, like, oh, I bet that's why. That makes a lot of sense.
All right. Well, tell us more about yourself. What gets you into the game, and what's it like in the Iron Mountains? I know you're running for Monarch there as well.
I am, and as far as what it's like in the IM, well, currently that's going to be just about like most other places in AmpGuard. There's not nothing physically going on. It's a sad truth that we have to deal with the ongoing pandemic. Under ordinary circumstances, it's actually, I've visited a few other places, and I have to say I'm glad to call the IM home. And I've seen a lot of interaction online with pretty much every kingdom out there, and it still makes me glad to call the IM home.
Yeah. Your kingdom, by the way, is the site of one of the best events that I've ever been to. Hands down, no questions asked.
The altitude didn't cause you any issues?
No, I didn't get beat. So
is this Rackus that we're talking about?
It was Rackus,
okay,
yeah. And it was specifically the Rackus where Mikey got his fourth belt. So they did this in this huge pavilion there up on the mountain. But no, I have a funny story to tell you off mic sometime about the trip that we took up there. We had a lot of younger kids with us, as you do with AmpGuard trips, and so there was a lot of altitude sickness going on. Luckily, I didn't have it, but yeah, great events up there. Once it opens back up, everybody should head up to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, now I'm wondering which site it was, because that was well before my time. I only started in 2014.
I know there was a disc golf park
in 15.
No, this actually wasn't the disc golf park one. So this one,
all your Rackus stories run together.
Yeah, this isn't going to clarify it at all for you, but it was on the side of a mountain.
I mean, I literally work on the side of a mountain. I work at Cheyenne Mountain Air Force Station.
Oh, wow.
And it was also near a casino town, which may not clarify it at all either.
Are you being intentionally vague, or do you not remember the name of the site?
I really don't remember the name of the site. I'm not being intentionally vague.
It sounds like a drug deal went down here, and you're trying to be coy. I didn't know.
No, I'm actually pretty sure I do know what site that is, because not this year, but last year we went back to that site, if it's the same site I'm thinking of.
Yeah, it was
right there near Cripple Creek.
Yes, I do. I remember that. I remember driving in with a bunch of other people into the casino town because they, if you were gambling, you got free steaks and all of the drinks that you could want.
Oh, I'm down. Let's go.
And I had just turned 21, so.
Oh man. I've got some off mic stories for you along those lines.
Yeah, right. But so, how long have you said that you weren't in when that site came up? How long have you been in AmpGuard?
So I started in August of 2014, got heavily involved March of the next year. I was at a shire that unfortunately is no longer active, but I didn't really get a newbie phase because they needed somebody who was willing to step into leadership and, well, military background. Yeah, I've got some experience there. Okay, let's make this happen because I'm enjoying this and want it to continue.
Right. So how do you get from day one there to social media director for AmpGuard International Board of Directors? What was your path through AmpGuard like up to this point?
Well, early
that
on,
was a sad sigh.
Yeah. Well, it's just having to think about all the different things that went into that. For a good year and a half, it was concentrating on running that shire and trying to get people prepped, but still being a new player myself, not really knowing particularly well how to do that. And then I moved. I was originally in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Now I'm in Colorado Springs. And that park lasted for another year and a half, and things started tapering off during that period. Now they've gone fully inactive, which kind of twisted a dagger that may or may not have been there already. seeing that happen after I left. But did a couple of Kingdom offices, GMR and Champion, and now with the job I'm at, I'm like, you know what? I probably could actually put some time into moderation because my job involves keeping a secure voice system up and operational. So if nothing's broke, not really doing a whole lot.
Right.
So I applied to that, talked to the Gorvin out of Golden Vale, who was then running the social media stuff, and got hired on. Took to it pretty well, and then all of a sudden they needed a lead mod because he was going to be stepping out of that role. It was supposed to be an interim role for him, so I'm like, you know what? I'll go ahead and throw my hat in the ring. I've gotten comfortable here, and that went well. And then for the social media lead, I had been serving as the lead mod. Like, in all seriousness, that entire transition from starting as a mod to social media lead was maybe a little over a year, just because the positions came open, and I'm like, you know, I can handle that. Let's throw my hat in.
I mean, Amthgard
then again,
needs good volunteers, you know? Like, that is a big thing. We're always looking for a great volunteer, and sometimes in our game we're not super great to volunteers, so, like...
No, we're not.
I don't envy... Like I said, I feel for the mod team.
Well,
some of that was a rough job.
So I know that the nature of this has changed recently with the conversation we were having a moment ago, you know, the nature of how the page works changing. But what does a social media director do day to day?
And do you have any cool upcoming plans? Are we going to get cool Snapchat filters or something?
Oh,
so
that's not a thing. The kids aren't doing that yet.
I mean, this is actually a wonderful thing to be able to bring up because right now we have some positions open.
Oh, wow.
We are looking for... yeah, it was posted about a couple weeks ago. I believe our HR director is planning on reposting them again this weekend because with the election going on, needless to say, that probably was not paying on anybody's mind.
Right.
I'm actually looking for a social media liaison, and that is platform agnostic. So they'll be working potentially on the Discord, which is unofficial, the Reddit, which has to remain unofficial, and the unofficial group, where they're kind of just a POC for people who have questions that need to be directed toward AI.
Right.
And then if those people don't have an answer, that gets elevated to me. If I don't have an answer, I can go grab an answer and give them something to work with.
Right.
Where, like, if you were to post on, say, some ISP, like Comcast Facebook page, you have somebody who responds on behalf of Comcast.
Right.
That's what we're looking for.
Oh, okay.
That's pretty cool. So kind of setting up a chain of communication for players to come to you and get information, whatever that happens to be that they need.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I honestly picture a vast majority of the time those questions that come up are going to be answered by the community before we ever even see it. But for those that are not necessarily easier to answer and they need kind of more of an official stance answer, it gives them that avenue. And over time, I'll be building an FAQ so that the people that are working, I hate using the term working for, so working with me, will have a document they can reference to be like, oh, they're asking about this, cool, we already got an answer for that.
Okay,
and provide it.
Right. Typically, I guess when we think of social media, we think of it more in the modern, like, marketing context, like, you know, putting out cool posts. Like, there's a oh God, what's his name? There's an Amthgarder around here that does TikTok, and he's got a really big following just because, like, LARP TikTok is a thing, and, like, I didn't know if that ever crossed into that boundary or you know what that looks like.
So we're starting to get into some of that. We just got a marketing director not too long ago.
I've been in touch with
her. I'll be working closely with. Yeah. So that's something that I will be working with them on. That's not something I personally have any experience as far as marketing goes.
Right.
So I would rely on their expertise for input there, but there are some other platforms that we're looking into, some of which are kind of on hold for a moment for the previously mentioned trademark disputes, which are still not complete. But yeah, that is something we're looking into, and there are some other plans down the road that I just not ready to be made public.
Yeah, that's
sure. And speaking, it reminds me, I had a point that I put a pin in. All of the social media things that you mentioned that are linkable, the Discord and things like that, we'll go ahead and include in the description. for YouTube. So if anyone listening would like to join those things, you'll be able to follow the links there.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah,
Free
absolutely.
advertisement. I'll take it.
Yeah, right?
yeah. We try to help out where we can. Yeah, so I guess I wanted to know, because you've been working with AI, and to a lot of our players, especially in Winter's Edge, AI is kind of a black box. Like, even when I come back, I mean, I'm very open with my kingdom about my interactions with AI and what they do. And like, you know, I've shared the org chart, and that thing is a fucking nightmare. It's a spider web.
Every org chart is.
Yeah, I know, but like, if you had to, and I know, you know, asking you to speak on behalf of AI is probably a tall order and something no one should have to do, but can you tell us, like,
I appreciate that.
yeah, I know, but can you give us some kernel of what AI does? Because again, I tell my players, you know, I interacted with AI, I asked them about this, they said X. Well, who's AI? I'm like, oh, fuck. Okay, the corporate wise, they're who runs the game. I don't know. We give them money sometimes. Like, it's a tough sell. Like, do you have a better spiel than I do? Because my elevator pitch is garbage.
So this is not anything sort of official. This is just me speaking to give kind of a spiel like you asked for.
Right.
But AI's job is to represent the interest of the game outside of the game itself. So ensuring that our nonprofit status is taken care of, ensuring that as a legal entity we are doing of what's required of us. Basically, all of those managerial aspects that day to day we don't have to think about. It's their / our, if I'm including myself, job to manage.
Yeah.
It's the things that, unless you have the experience and want to deal with it, they can take care of for us.
Right. All of the admin, the housekeeping, all of the stuff that you don't think about and probably doesn't come up in your day-to-day park stuff.
Hey, it's what I always say about our board of directors. The job of the board of directors isn't to manage everything in the kingdom. It's to control the level of crazy that the populace finds out about.
Yeah, right. especially at the AI level too. The legal crazy that they have to deal with is
yeah, right.
Well, I mean, even most of the time as a sitting monarch, it's stuff that you don't necessarily have to deal with outside of BOD meetings.
Right.
Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no. I was gonna transition into the monarchy thing, because I understand that you're running opposed in the Iron Mountains. You know, are you excited about that? You got any plans? You know, obviously COVID throws a wrench in everything, but do you have any cool online events we can hype up, or what's going on?
So, small correction, unopposed.
Yeah, you're right.
And there are some things that are kind of theoretical at this point. We're still working out, nailing down I don't want to make a rigid schedule, but a loose schedule.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how close this is to Winter Edge, so I'll go ahead and just explain it as though it's completely different. IM actually runs on a 3-person ticket, so Monarch, Regent, and Champion are one item that is voted on.
Chase will be so happy to hear you say that. We have a player that put out forth an all-thing proposal to have a system just like yours.
Oh, I shit all over it too. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it failed. Sorry, go ahead. Shout out to Chase for that failed attempt.
I understand the idea behind it. I just don't like it for individual and new players, but
yeah,
not the point.
I personally don't necessarily. I see the benefits of it, but I don't necessarily agree with it either. But it's what we currently have.
Right.
Right.
But our GMR runs separately, and I've got myself running as Monarch, Sir Quiet running as my Regent, and then a first-time Imperial officer, Lord Morvi Moonblade, out of Northern Holdfast, which is Fort Collins, running as our champion, and then my woman-at-arms, Countess Amara, running as GMR. Now, yes, she was included in our declaration, but no, technically she's not part of the ticket.
Right.
We just kind of established the full team and decided, hey, we'll just go ahead and present this all at once.
So, kingdom management question for you, because this works a little different from kingdom to kingdom. Does when you're making decisions for things like banning or something else big like that, is your GMR one of the 3 that are involved in that process in the Iron Mountains?
So, in all technicality, as per rule book, it is a Monarch decision. But yes, It is done in coordination with the PM and GMR.
That's the way that we do it as well. It's interesting that you would have the 3-person ticket then, but then the GMR is not part of that ticket. It's kind of
It kind of ensures that it's impartial, or at least to some degree. it's
yeah.
impartial.
I mean, you could still stack it 2 to 3, right?
Yeah.
But I mean,
No, the PM is separate as well.
oh,
So
you're right.
those
You're right.
three
Yeah.
offices that are involved are running independently.
Yeah. That part of it I like.
Not opposed.
That part of it I do like, and I would definitely not want to see GMR added to the ticket for that very reason.
So okay, you're running as a 3-person ticket. Hopefully, unopposed. Your election is, I believe, this weekend. Yeah.
Yes.
Fantastic. So plans. I know loose plan. But what do you got on the dock?
So, well, for starters, we are actually using a rain theme specifically. It's very loosely tied to the Robin Hood mythos, given that there is so much out there that can be utilized and serve as inspiration. And I'm actually going to pull up the question that was asked of us in regards to that theme real quick. So give me just a moment. This shouldn't take but a few seconds.
No, you're fine.
Hey.
Because we had a wonderful question asking, why are y'all running with a rain theme with everything else that's going on, essentially? And there's been some discussion of the value of a theme in general at the kingdom or imperial level, because potentially stepping on local stuff, et cetera, et cetera.
That was going to be my question.
Yeah,
and
I was
we
also
can get
gonna
into
ask
this
that.
later. How do you feel about themed rain?
So it's, for me personally, I absolutely love the use of a theme because it makes the job easier. By that I mean it gives us framework to work with.
Sure.
I feel like giving yourself some sort of area to specifically focus on and pull inspiration from makes it easier to plan stuff that's unique. For example, if we were doing in person, an archery tournament would pretty much be required at some point with a Robin Hood theme.
Right.
An archery contest?
Oh God.
Yep. And I've personally participated in 2 different forms of archery tournament when it comes to AmpGuard. One that was actual combat archery and one that was target archery, which the combat archery was, in my opinion, a lot more fun. But
Yeah.
And how do you guys do your, as an aside to the conversation, how do you guys do your combat archery? I've seen it done a couple of different ways.
So there were 3 rows, I believe it was 5, 7, 5 of basically hula hoops spread out across the field. They were 15, actually I think they were at least 20 feet apart, so it was always eligible for full draw. If you don't have a foot resting in that ring and you take a shot, it doesn't count.
Okay.
And it was, in addition, there was a dagger tossed in the center of the field.
Yeah. Now, that's the way that Neverwin used to do it, is this was more, I like your system better. Theirs was more linear, where it was you started farthest distance, right?
Yeah.
And the closest distance was still full draw range. But if everyone missed at every single stage, then it came down to daggers at the end.
Yeah. So
on that dagger, I'm not an archer. That would not be my thing.
Oh man, there were some there. We actually ran one of those at Rackus a couple years back, and that, let me tell you, that made for some interesting matches to watch and participate in, because I did participate in that one. And same thing as per normal with wounds or a weapon or your bow getting hit. That is as per normal combat. So if you get hit in the leg, all of a sudden you can't move.
Right.
Well,
Crawl to the
you can
hoop.
still move on your knees. Yeah, pretty much. In fact, I was eliminated after being shot in the leg, crawling, actually resting my shoulder into the hula hoop to fire a shot from resting on my shoulder. Unfortunately, I missed that. Mesrith was my opponent for that one, out of Desert Wind. Sir Mesrith, too. Correct
Yeah,
myself.
Sir Mesrith is a great guy. He is currently serving as, what is he? Is he XCOM? No.
Yeah, he's the XCOM chair, I believe.
Yeah, okay, he is.
Yeah, Sir Darko from Winter's Edge mentioned him when he had moved out there to Desert Wind for a while.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Small world.
It is. So, back on topic, sorry. That I'm always curious about tournament formats and things like that. It really interests me the way that different kingdoms approach similar problems when it comes to how to efficiently run tournaments and how to keep it fun, things like that.
So you're talking right up my alley. I'm very Smith heavy when it comes to amp cards, so go for it.
Excellent.
Fantastic.
So you've got this idea for the Robin Hood theme. You have some people that are questioning, why do a theme, especially when we're in this online environment. You had mentioned that you wanted to pull up the direct question that was asked of you.
Right. To quote, because I'm on the right post, but I can't find the specific question. I will actually quote Sir Grix, Dustin Gates on online here. Rain themes have been a contentious topic here for a while now. It is difficult to engage players, and the theme often seems to disappear outside of occasional references from the officers. Individual parks also tend to have themes, leading to some conflict about where players can best put their energy. Could you talk a bit about why your team decided to theme the rain and how you intend on working it into your plans?
It's a good question.
And yeah, it was absolutely a wonderful question. He asked 5 different questions of the team as a whole that were very well worded and gave us some opportunity to expound upon on our plans a little bit. My specific response, the theme gives us a general direction we can take roleplay opportunities and provide inspiration for other projects as well as for Imperial events. Events being a very loose definition. It helps gives us some direction and some energy and particularly some excitement because it was originally our champion on the ticket that brought it up, and he was absolutely thrilled with the idea of running with it. In my champion's words, Robin Hood itself is a perfect example of a core story that can be told again and again. It has all the elements of a good story with no completely strict storyline, only a rough outline of events. There's a reason it stuck around as a concept for nearly 800 or more years. By overlaying it into a theme as a reign, it allows for freedom and flexibility while also staying connected to our group as a whole, as it is a story that everyone has at least a base level of familiarity with. Plus, it's awesome and I'm stubborn.
No, that's totally fair, and I think there's a point to that too, where it is sort of a simple enough theme that anybody can really latch onto it. Their existing characters and personas and everything else.
Yeah, and from my perspective, just that basic framework and those sources to pull inspiration from adds a lot of value. I mean, if you look up garb ideas related to Robin Hood, you will end up with pages upon pages of ideas, even just based on movie costuming.
Well, yeah, and you have a lot of archetypes that you can play with in there that are also and equally loosely defined. You have the merry men, of course, that you could fill a huge gap, and then even within that, you have Friar Tuck's, Friar Cult, and everything. I say cult, Friar Group, Parish that's doing their thing within it, and you've seen a lot of different takes on how that could be done in different movies and things. You have the guards of Nottingham and the sheriff's men and things like that, and you could even play around with ideas that there's some people that are in law enforcement that aren't necessarily on the payroll of the sheriff of Nottingham and are good people thrown into a bad situation sort of thing. I love the idea of doing a Kingdom Reign with that because there's a lot of good story that could come out of it.
Now, here's something you just touched on. What role are you and your Monarchy team going to play in this? Are you going to be the sheriff? Are you going to be the bad guys? Because that sounds fun.
That would be fun.
I would prefer not to answer that because that has not been made public to the IM yet.
Oh, okay. So we'll have to wait and see.
You will have to wait and see on that one.
I was hoping for the inside scoop. Okay.
Yeah, right.
That sounds... Any time that we pitch a rain theme here, I'm like, I'll be the bad guy. Do I need to turn coat? Is it like it's not even a surprise anymore? I'm just like, can I be the bad guy? Huh? Me?
Yeah.
I mean, some people are good at playing the bad guy.
I got a good evil laugh. I think I can do it.
Well, now you say that, you got to demonstrate.
You do.
Ah,
yeah.
fuck.
He's drinking Diet Coke right now. He can't.
It's in my nose. Oh, God. Can I do it on command? I don't even...
Can you do it without blowing out our sound bar?
I'm going to take a step back, and I'm just going to... God. I got to pretend I just, like...
Performance pressure, I understand.
Told a dad joke to my kid or something.
Okay, it's not. I'll give it on a scale of 1 to 5. I'll give it a 4.
Yeah,
It's
right.
a solid
See?
4.
Yeah, it's like when I steal my my kids' last 4 Dino Nugs. That's what I do.
What's a dino
I
nug?
was gonna say about a 3.5. So yeah,
Okay.
that's pretty decent.
I'm happy with my evil laugh. And a Dino Nugget, you don't know what a Dino Nugget is?
I don't have kids.
It's a chicken nugget shaped like a dinosaur.
Do they have
Hey,
prehistoric
I'm
sauce you
an
can do?
adult.
Do you eat dino nuggets as well? Am I the only one here that doesn't know what a dino nugget
You're
is?
the only one that doesn't know what a Dino Nugget is.
Does it come with
I'm
like primordial sauce? Can you dip them in primordial sauce?
No, it's just ketchup.
I'm an adult with no kids, and I eat Dino Nuggets. All right.
Man, dino nuggets, if you're listening to this, La Brea tar pit sauce.
This,
I mean, I
this
don't know
podcast
how you
is
didn't
brought
know.
to you by Dino Nuggets,
Yeah,
a Tyson
apparently.
product or
Yeah.
something. I don't know.
So
I'm pretty sure it is a Tyson product, actually.
Yeah, I'm just. I
isn't
know
it-
they make chicken.
they make. I want to say they make like 85%. They make all of McDonald's nuggets. This is a weird conversation. How did we get on dino nuggets? What have you done to me?
He won't tell us if he's going to be the evil sheriff. I did an evil laugh. I talked about Dino Nuggets because that was my excuse. And I don't know. Okay, back on topic.
So
So back to Smith stuff.
Yes, please.
is that right?
I would guess that both of you had probably seen, if not at least heard of, my largest Smith effort recently. I ran a large, completely online Inter-Kingdom ANS tournament. We had 46, if I remember correctly, 45, 46 total entrants and 98 total items.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I believe. Wait, what park was this being hosted under? Because there's obviously been a couple of online ANS things. Was it just the Iron Mountains
So-
proper, or
This one was Iron Mountain's Kingdom level, technically.
Okay.
It was listed as an inter-kingdom competition, and obviously we hit that goal and then some. I think out of the participants we had 3 people from within the IM enter.
nice?
The vast majority of the competition was out of Kingdom.
That's what you want to see. That's
Mhm.
what you want to see.
Fantastic.
So how did it go? Like, walk us through what judging on a scale like that, and especially in the online world that we're living in, looks like.
So there's some definite room for improvement and I do intend, regardless of what's going on with the pandemic, to run it again next year. There's
In an
some
online format?
Yes.
Yeah, why not?
Oh, nice.
We've opened that Pandora's box, and I think it works great. Like that's one of the few things from COVID that I'm really like excited about that we've realized we can do is online ANS tournaments. They're amazing.
I totally agree. Is Pandora's box a good, like the only thing that was left inside is hope and ANS tournaments? Is that really where we want to be?
Yeah. Listen, it's been a rough year.
Thanks, 2020.
I think there are some other positives that came out of it. For example, ways to have online participation. I think that I actually intend to propose that that's something that we never fully do away with, even if we do go back to meeting in person. I'd like for people who have a harder time getting out physically for whatever reason to still be able to maintain that presence. And I think that's something that we can definitely learn from.
Yeah, I agree. So, so what was it like?
So I was not a judge. I was purely the tournament organizer. But walking through that entire process, I probably started at least a month, if not a month and a half, before the first announcement ever dropped. Deciding how I wanted that format to work, recruiting judges, getting as much stuff set up prior to it becoming public as possible. Then the first announcement went up, and I found I've started writing kind of a guide for this, but haven't finished it yet because it is an interesting process. You have to figure out, okay, you get your judges recruited, you decide on your format, which discussions on format for an ANS tournament in and of itself could go on for days.
Right.
It
And
would be
then-
nice to have
okay.
like an Iron Mountain style format for doing an ANS competition, much like you have a Warlord Sports competition for
Well,
fighting turn.
And this is funny that you say that because the Warlord Sports Style tournament that everyone talks about was originally deployed in Iron Mountains. The Rackus I was talking about earlier is when Michael Hammer of God originally made that style of tournament.
Man,
I mean,
y'all are first to everything.
it went to several different iterations, of course, but yeah, I mean, we were there for that first adaptation of it that now has evolved into what it is now. Yeah, Iron Mountains does everything. They were also the first empire.
That's an iteration I didn't even know about, actually.
Yeah, back then it was you. Again, an aside. Sorry. Back then it was a system where like you had different flags, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and people were rotating from groups to try and accomplish some of the fighting pit problems that we were facing at that point.
Yeah.
And it then evolved into. Oh, is it still a Warlord Sports style tournament? Warlord Sports kind of isn't here anymore.
Yeah, they did a bad thing and now they don't exist. I don't know what we call it, but that's what I've always heard it referred to as.
Yeah.
See, we tend not to mention it by name so much, at least around here, for sure. But
Yeah.
colloquially, it seems to still be referred to as.
Can we just call it the Iron Mountain style tournament?
Yeah.
Is that fair to do?
It's yours. I'm giving it to you.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. I'm down with that. I'll let the rest of the IM know.
Yeah, there you
Great. Winter's Edge deems it so.
But format issues aside, you get your format settled, you get your judges recruited, and then I made an announcement a month before entries ever even opened. And unlike with traditional ANS tournaments, entries were open for a full, 28 days, but a full month.
Mm-hmm.
Which I actually had some input from my judges, since I don't have necessarily their permission to dime them out on who gave the suggestion. I'll leave that alone.
Sure.
But one of my judges in particular suggested, hey, we might want to leave this window open longer because with the level of competition I was desiring, we have to have a certain amount of time between it being announced and the close of entries to be able to allow artisans to produce that level of work. And we got some amazing entries as a result. I mean, some of the stuff on there was absolutely beautiful. If you search Iron Mountains Inter-Kingdom ANS competition on Facebook and find it, you can still see all the entries from that. Some of them were just absolutely mind-blowing. I'm glad I didn't have to judge.
We'll link this in the description as well, too.
I'm making a note now. So here's a question I have for you, because it seems like you're about to be a sitting monarch, and you'll certainly have to deal with this when it comes.
My condolences.
Well, yeah, there's a therapy group. No, so my question to you is, as a sitting monarch, I have gotten a lot of out of kingdom recommendations for somebody's like 10th order of the something, 10th Garber or whatever, from these online ANS tournaments, and it's a real hard sell. Not because the person didn't do great work, but because, I have entered one online ANS tournament, and I was able to frame my photos in a way that hid all my worst mistakes and things like that. So how do you feel about the highest tier of awards being given? I mean, obviously masterhood is a separation, but where do you side on that, especially with online events?
So I have asked a few specific people, and then in general, I've asked for advice going into this because it will be my first term as a kingdom level or imperial monarch.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll go ahead and dime this person out. It is actually Dame Fiona, also known as Jennifer Palmer, who is the executive director for AIBOD, and I asked her about it. And her answer is one that I kind of took to heart because I can see it being something that really matters. And
right.
What it really comes down to is my default response to any award recommendation is going to be a yes, unless you can give, or I have a specific concrete reason of this is why they should not be recognized. And yes, for cases masterhood, etc., I would be asking for input, but unless I have a concrete reason to say this person should not receive this recognition, then they should be recognized.
Right. I'm fully on board with the recognizing players. It's just I have gotten I'm in my second term now.
You are. You're 9 months.
Oh no. God, that's a whole baby.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry. So
So Winter's Edge is your baby. Got it.
Yeah, Winter's Edge is my baby, and it's my bastard child. I'm gonna go get some cigarettes. Okay. No, just I've gotten no less than 10 ninth or 10th order recommendations for online competitions. And, you know, I've sought feedback on them, and I am with you when I see an award rec or an award on my rec sheet, I'm just, yes, I greenlight almost all of them, unless it's a really dumb thing that's super obvious. But with the 9ths and 10ths, I've had to go get feedback. And it's difficult to do online, you know, like, hey, did you get to handle this piece? Did you get to see all angles of it? Did you have any questions about it? Was there anything that you noticed? You know, because these higher level awards are kind of hard to give online, but I think there should be some avenue for getting them, and I just don't know a good way to do that. I guess I'm trying to have you solve a problem I've had for the past 9 months.
I mean, for me personally, if it's something like that, and I'm not sure about it, was something that was entered online, and you know, the pictures may leave some questions. I'm not a big fan of necessarily, particularly with higher level awards. It doesn't need to be a surprise.
Right.
So if that's something I'm considering, I might reach out to the person who has been recommended or who made the thing and be like, hey, I've got some questions on this. There are some things that I would like to see. Can you help me out? Can you send me pictures of this in particular, or
I really like that.
whatever the case may be.
I like the mindset of it doesn't have to be a surprise. Because I had always thought, like, I got to kind of jump them with this award, but you're right, I don't have to. I can be like, hey, you know you're good at shit. Show me your shit.
Well, and a lot of times, too, we have talked on the show before about the separation between sword belt and some of the other belts where, you know, I enter a tournament because I'm specifically trying to get my next Order of the Warrior or something like that.
Sure.
Not everyone enters ANS tournaments for that reason. But it is a reason that people enter. And I also like what you're doing there. I think it's really reasonable to say, you know, hey, look, you entered this thing. I was really, you know, as Monarch, it was brought to my attention. It looks good, but I had some questions about. The cat has decided to join the show. Great.
Yeah, when you're at that higher level, though, I think you kind of know that awards are possible, and it shouldn't be a surprise if somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, I need different angles of that."
Right.
At the same time, particularly with that higher level, you might hit a spot where the candidate will tell you, "No, I don't feel I'm ready for that."
Right.
And giving them that opportunity to say, "I'd rather not," rather than having to turn it down after the fact, could be particularly valuable.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
And cut down on some embarrassment, too, if that was the case.
Yeah. I learned something today.
I've
Well,
never
like,
been Monarch, so I've never had to deal with anything like that before.
Fuck you, Crown Knight ass!
Well, like my woman in arms recently, she is the HR director, and they had not talked to her before giving her I want to say it was her 7th or 8th rose,
Mhm.
for moderating duties that she never did. She's never been a mod. So she had to talk to them after the fact and be like, hey, look, you offered me this thing, but I've never done this.
Oh,
That's awkward. And honestly, though, quality move. I mean, she could have very easily taken the rose and just kept her mouth shut. Like, that's a really quality move on that part.
yeah.
I mean, had she not have said something, I might have had to said something to her.
Fair.
But no, I knew that wasn't going to be an issue at all. She's a wonderful person. I absolutely. I mean, it's part of the reason I belted her.
Who is your woman at arms again? Sorry, I know you said the name earlier, but I do not remember it now.
Countess Amara. She is out of Iron Mountain,
That's
Denver. She's also the HR director for AI.
There is no amount of money you could pay me to take a role.
Oh man, I know, and I can't explain why, but I know her hands are very full. That might be an off mic or off record conversation, because I feel for her truly. I feel for anybody in the higher level AI positions. Like, that just seems like a hellscape to me.
Well, so in particular, like, I don't know what an HR director would normally deal with if we were open and everything was going on. I don't know what that position looks like in those situations. But specifically in the online situation that we find ourselves in now, where, and I'm not to talk to kind of the darker nature of humanity here, but you see people at their worst online. And
This is a thing that's come up
100%.
on Yeah, on the off-topic boards, people will be like, "How the fuck are people still getting banned? Amthgard's not happening right now." And it's like, yeah, it turns out people suck online too. Who knew?
Yeah. It's so it's an interesting thing that social media has done to us. You're not the same person to your parents that you are to your friends, right? And you're not the same person to your friends that you are to your close friends, and you may even be a different person at Amthgard. This isn't an issue of being multi-faced or anything like that. It's we respond differently based on the company that we're in, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't cuss around my parents, right?
So with my position, I can definitely expound upon that.
Yeah, please.
It's a situation of a almost mask of anonymity, where people see these names and see these actions they take online, but they don't really know who's taking these actions or who's making these comments. In fact, while I was serving as a moderator, it often became a bit of an investigative case where we would get into, okay, this person is acting in a way that is not acceptable. Who do we take that to? So we would have to kind of delve into, okay, this is where this person actually lives. Okay, let's see if we can find a persona name. Okay, here's who they are in the orc. Okay, here's the kingdom they belong to. Here's who we take that to.
Right.
We have to kind of break through those layers, because without doing so, they, for whoever might be involved on the community page, they don't necessarily know where that person is from. So we, in some of the particularly egregious cases where we do actually take it to their kingdom monarch, we had to do the digging to find out where they belong.
Yeah, this is the paradox of the invisible man, right? What could you be capable of if you never had to look yourself in the mirror again? And this is that's what I think of when you say like the wall of anonymity that you were mentioning a moment ago. It's not what you even personally believe anymore.
Well,
it's your reputation or your cred in some way.
Well, let me put it to you in a way that you and I can both understand.
Sure.
Anyone who's ever worked customer service where you have to take inbound customer calls,
yeah,
the people who talk to you are horrible. Flo and I have both worked at Comcast at different points in our life, and when people call in and there's not a face-to-face, they can be truly awful people to you. And it's because they don't have to see your face when they're saying their horrible things. They don't have to ever truly know who you are, and you don't ever get to know who they are. So there is, I guess it is maybe the invisible man paradox, but just when you don't have to face-to-face with the person and you don't have to see how they're reacting and real-time assess their emotions, people can be monsters.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the most extreme example, because you don't even necessarily get a name.
Right.
At least with the forums we're participating in, we get a name to work with. So there's some of that stripped away, but not much at all.
Yeah, I mean, when the guy's name is James P. Rebel Flag, like, good luck. It's obviously their Smurf account. They don't care.
And that's when we throw a boot out and be done with it.
You have something against the proud Rebel Flag family? I don't know, that joke didn't land quite
a bit. Yeah, actually,
that joke didn't land quite as well as I'd hoped. I started saying it and then realized the example that you had used, and was like, "Well, we're going to see where this goes."
No.
What do you do to combat that more toxic branch of Amthgard? The shock jock value sort of thing.
So I can speak to the unofficial group in my time there. The unofficial group I have never had any sort of administrative affiliation with. Talking about what was formerly known as Unmod, I don't even necessarily care what they're referring to themselves as now.
Yeah.
But with the formerly official group, we had a set of community standards, and we had a general escalation path for relatively minor but riffy offenses. In more extreme cases, overt racism being one I've actually seen on the AmpGuard main page.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of those where, as a lead, it's okay. Yeah, we're not going to bother with the normal procedures. Yeah, you're gone, and I'm going to report this to your kingdom monarchy with screenshots.
Yeah.
Yeah. I said good day, sir.
Oh, they don't even get that. They don't even get that courtesy at that point.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Probably the most interesting, which was just before I took the social media lead position, and shortly thereafter was the transition to unofficial. We had a case that was particularly just a thread blew up so freaking quickly. It was one that actually you said you're in 9 months, so yeah, you would have been on the COM at the time, where Promethea took it to the COM and we put a pause on the thread for, I want to say, a good
I know
12
which
to
one you're
24
talking about.
hours.
Yeah.
We, like, the only time from the time I started modding until even now that I recall us actually halting a thread, while I, as the lead mod, was recruiting temps because we needed more bodies to deal with it.
Yeah, there's only so many people that can work on this thing, and it takes a lot of man hours to actually handle.
That was probably the roughest 72 to 96 hours while I was moderating. In fact, it got to the point where I think it was night 2 or 3 where I had to tell my team, "Hey, look, I'm sorry to just drop this, but my wife needs some of my attention right now."
Yeah, I need to be away from this.
Yeah, I mean, it was rough.
Yeah. Well, and people forget too that the moderators are, I actually did not work as an AmpGuard moderator, but I worked as a moderator for a very large subreddit, one of the largest, and there is really
someone very close to you has told me about that.
Yeah. So you are constantly walking a line of how do I handle this as unbiased as possible, and then no matter how you handle it, you're fucking wrong, and people are gonna say these mods are assholes, these mods are fucking paid off, or whatever, and it's just like I am a human being trying to sort through this tire fire that I don't even give a shit about, and you people are being awful to me.
Man.
I mean, yeah, that sucks so bad. But I mean, you've been in it, so you're one of the best people for the role.
So 100%. Did you ever get personally called out?
Oh, all the time. In fact, if you ever find my Reddit username, you'll see where I've been called out, and then where I've actually come back and posted screenshots of no, here's how this is handled, here's our discussion, that kind of thing.
That's a serious breach of Reddit. Like, even I know that, and I'm not a common Reddit user.
Yep. I didn't care, and
I just learned that there's something called Reddit.
Oh yeah, it's a big thing. I mean, hell, I don't have to be super nondescript about it. I modded the politics subreddit, our politics, for about 2 years. And this was right after the Trump election, so you can imagine, not a great place to be.
Yeah.
As a fellow moderator, color me impressed.
Dude, it's not. I don't recommend it for anyone. It sucks. And you're removing blatant shit like death threats, and people are like, "Oh, mods are biased. Mods are obviously paid off by the Trump campaign," and you're like, "Threatening to kill a guy?" Like,
yeah,
what?
no, man.
This is rule number 1. No advocating violence. What the fuck, bud?
I mean, I had someone call me out by name, and I don't remember if it was a local or a kingdom level page, saying I'm the reason they're quitting AmpGuard.
Oh, beautiful. That's on my bucket list. If a truly toxic asshole says I'm the reason they're quitting AmpGuard, chef's kiss.
Do you get an award for that?
I would give someone an award for that.
Not for that specifically, no. I have received awards for my moderation work, but not for that specifically.
Well, so this was something I was going to get into. There are a lot of unmod boards. There's one really big one. It's Boffers and Blasphemy. I think everybody kind of knows about it. What's your opinion on those? From I guess it can be official or unofficial. It doesn't matter. I kind of have my own opinion. I wanted to know where you stand on those, because it's always treated like, oh, well, this isn't an AmpGuard discussion. It's generic LARP discussion. It could be anything, but it's obviously AmpGuard.
Right.
So officially, session opinion does not exist.
Sure.
Like straight up, we've never even had conversations about it. Unofficially, comparison to Moss Eisley, such a hive of scum and villainy.
Yeah.
No, I'm
Thank
with
you.
you.
Thank you.
That is exactly my opinion. People talk about it like, hey, it's just memes. None of this matters. Oh, it all stays in B&B. I'm like, no, it fucking
Straight
doesn't.
up, it does matter. I was a member of the group for a long time just to kind of keep an eye on it because sometimes B&B picked up things quicker than the main group would. So it's nice to know, hey, this is coming. But no, even there, your actions are not without repercussions. Like I specifically have seen something there, tried to get a hold of a monarch, couldn't reach the monarch, took it directly to a BOD member and saying, hey, this is a problem.
Yep.
Thankfully, the response I got was, I'll take care of it in less than 12 hours later, seeing the individual suspended.
Yep.
But
I have had to wade in there, and doing that as a sitting monarch is a bear trap. I mean, because again, it really is treated like you have no authority here, whether or not that's true, right? It's not amped guard discussion, and fuck right off. But yeah, I have had to wade in with people posting some really transphobic shit or some racist shit, and be like, hey, I understand that you don't quote play amped guard, but you are in my kingdom, so if you ever show up at a field in my kingdom, it's on site. Like, I mean,
yeah.
we're gonna have a problem.
Yeah.
So
there's got to be that change in mentality from it didn't happen in an amp guard field, it doesn't matter, to hey, I don't care where this happened, this is inappropriate.
Exactly.
So draw the I'm going to say this, and Cabbage, you know how much I hate doing this. I hate devil's advocate arguments because I feel like devil's advocate in some way insults the intelligence of the people in the conversation, like, oh, you've never thought about this before. But so I
was a debate student, I'm used to it.
Yeah, right. I want to use this to set a boundary. That is my specific purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the boundary for this? Like, I understand if someone goes onto the main page and posts some disturbing things, that's easy. If they go on to, like, Winter's Edge has an unmod board, our Manatee board. And
also don't love that.
Right. And we've had problems in the past where people would say things there, and then the attitude was, well, it's an unofficial board. The whole point is just to say, crazy, ridiculous,
just
hurtful,
memes, bud.
Yeah. But where does the line get drawn? If someone posts something on their personal page, right, not an AmpGuard page, but just my flow page, that there's obvious problems with, I want to create kind of a very clear thing. Like they post something up that is, enacting Godwin's law in some way, and it's horrible. And do you respond to that? Is that outside of the purview of AmpGuard?
So me personally,
yeah,
or
I'm not asking for AI. I'm not asking you for AI's opinion here. I was wanting your opinion and yours, Cabbage.
Again, as I can speak to this very directly, but I'll let you go first. And as a monarch, this is something you're going to have to deal with. Hopefully not,
guaranteed.
But I have.
Me personally, I don't give a crap where it's posted, especially if we're talking something to that extreme. I have the choice of getting rid of this individual, whomever they may be, or losing every single person that would be the, quote, target of the argument they're making.
Right.
Okay.
I don't care where it's at. They're gone.
So for me, it's a little bit different, and I generally agree with you. If I see something, I'm going to say something, or since I'm in the position, I'm going to do something. That being
I don't
said,
necessarily mean ban, but there is going to be some repercussion for it.
Sure, you reach out and talk to him or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
As far as if it happens on an unmod board or something like that, I'm more than happy to step in and throw my weight around. It's still amped guard. We can all pretend like it's not, but you're throwing up the thinnest veneer that I'm going to walk right through. When it comes to personal page, I'm friends with a lot of people in our kingdom. I'm also not friends with a lot of people in our kingdom.
Right.
I cannot snoop everyone's page, and if somebody else sees something and brings it to me and says, hey, this person in your kingdom has a profile picture that's got a swastika, I'm going to talk to that person. But I can't do the footwork of going into everybody's personal page, becoming their friend because their stuff is private, and then checking to make sure that they're okay.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. I'm not going to even try to expend the amount of energy that would be required for the footwork. But if it's brought to my attention, that's a different story.
So I want to then kind of expound upon that, because what I gave was a rather extreme example.
Yeah.
That we could all very easily draw the lines on, right?
Mm.
But real life isn't as cut and dry as that. So what happens in situations where, and I really want to avoid political stuff on the podcast as much as I can, because that's not really our platform, but I'm going to use Trump as an example here because he's a divisive figure, right?
Sure.
So what if someone is then going on their page and retweeting some of the stuff that our 45th president has said that is, I mean, it is demonstrably against human rights or demonstrably against some of these other things. And they're doing it because they actually genuinely believe this. They're not trying to just be negative or cause trouble or anything. Whatever has led them down this horrible place that they are in life, they think that this is the appropriate place to do. You know, as a monarch, and again, we're not saying that everyone gets banned. You know, you mentioned that earlier. This isn't, we're not talking about a ban for these people, but we are, the discussion that we're having is someone then reports it to you and you have to act in some way. What do you do in situations like that?
So for me, it's I unfortunately tend to simplify matters. Well, I don't even know necessarily that unfortunately is the right word.
Right.
Are these actions going to be something that cause my players, my populace to feel threatened?
Yep.
And if that's the case, then it needs to be taken care of. Like I said, I don't care where necessarily these actions took place, but if it's something that's going to cause my player base to feel threatened, I need to take action.
That's the same tack that I take. So I look at, I don't care who said it, who they're parroting. I look at the actual thing that they're saying, right? If it's political and it's just like, oh, eat it libs, yeah, that sucks and it's stupid, but
Sure.
that's not bad. If it's something like, you know, oh, go down to the polls with your AR-15 and make sure to take extra care watching all the ballots. Okay, you've now advocated for a crime.
Right.
And that's where I'm going to step in and say, no, you can't do that, right? This is something you're not allowed to do. But beyond that, if they're just sharing Trump tweets, as much as I'm not a fan, I mean, I'm going to let that go in so much as it doesn't negatively affect my play.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you both can see where I was going with this, I'm sure, but the idea here is I don't want to get locked into this this system where, based on the political alignment that someone holds, that the rest of the group may not hold, or some ideology that they have could then be taken as, you know, different people are offended by different things. Maybe
Dude,
that's
that
the
already
best way
happens.
to say that.
I can give you a very real example where I you know, at the height of some things happening earlier this year, I put a, you know, Winter's Edge stands with Black Lives Matter post.
I remember.
And I mean, like, you wouldn't think that would be divisive, but here we are. And, you know, I as much as I don't like bringing real world politics into this game, I think
We don't exist in a vacuum.
Yeah, it doesn't
right?
exist in a vacuum, and some of those things were spilling over.
I mean, straight up, that was posted on the Amped Guard page by one of my people who runs that page. You know, they talked to me about it prior. I actually ran that one up. Hey, how do we feel about this? And that was something that, as an organization, we decided, yeah, you know, that's good. Let's go with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my post was sooner than Ampguard International's official stance. I can tell you from the Circle of Monarchs chat, the conversation was, well, are we going to post anything about this? You know, what are we going to do? And AI basically said, make whatever statement you're comfortable with. Don't say anything dumb. That, I mean, Not exactly, but
oversimplifying, but yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of the direction. And then it was a few weeks later when the official AmpGuard page had that, AmpGuard stands with Black Lives Matter banner go up. So it was good to see that I didn't take the wrong step there. But yeah, it was, I actually banned a player over that. Because I posted my big thing about, hey, Winner's Edge stands with Black Lives Matter. We try to be an inclusive kingdom. We're always trying to improve.
Sure.
Here are your avenues for help. All of that. If you see something, say something, that kind of shit. And a player posted up and said, fuck you, all lives matter. And then, some conversation. And then it was like, oh, fuck you, fight me in the ring, race baiter. And I was like, nope, you're gone. Like, do not pass go, do not collect $200. And I banned that person. And then the chatter behind my back in the kingdom was, oh, he's banning people for having different political ideologies. And I'm like, fucking
that's not a political ideology.
Right. Debate me, race baiter is not an ideology. It is. But I mean, again, you can never make everybody happy. And with stuff like that, I have to look at what they were saying and was right. I care not that this guy was saying things that were political. This dude was trying to start fist fights in my kingdom. That's why I banned the guy.
Right.
If he had just said all lives matter and then disappeared, not a huge fan of it. I'll probably lock the thread down so the comments don't go out of control, but he can have his opinion. When he's threatening to hurt people, that's where I drew the line and said, no, get the fuck out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's an easy one too. That again, this is someone who, wherever they were before that, took it to a place that you absolutely can't go. Not on a public board, not in a game like ours, not anywhere.
You should always treat it like you're in a feast hall having a conversation. That is how I've approached all of the online discussions. Is, hey, we're all in the room together.
Right.
I'm not going to say anything to you that I wouldn't say in person.
Right.
And I think that's the idea of how it's meant to be treated. So that some people feel comfortable behind their keyboards. Just know I'm treating this as if you threatened people at a feast.
Yeah, that you had turned to someone beside you.
Yeah,
and not
you are
jokingly,
in the room threatening to fight some guys. That's how I'm treating them.
Yeah, that's fair.
I hadn't actually heard that analogy before, but yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, it's with online, I think we can adapt in some ways, but we still have to keep the person at the front of the discussion.
Yeah. Needless to say, that's definitely a hard topic, particularly in this day and age.
It is, and there's so many what ifs that I don't think we could ever cover them all. Again, I've got some real world examples. You will unfortunately probably have some of your own by the time your term is over. But I mean, we could devil's advocate for the next 8 hours and still not have a dedicated line somewhere,
Sure, absolutely. And again, I was interested in seeing, we have someone here who is about to take the office of monarch. Is this your first time?
It will be.
Yeah, so someone that's about to take the office of monarch for the very first time, and someone who is getting close to finishing up their first term, second term, and is deep into PTSD at this point. We haven't had a situation like COVID come up before. There's always been an online element to it, but the largest changes I've seen to the way that we do our online platform seem to have come when the online platform was our only means of communication. So I think that questions like this are going to be more important in the future to answer. And at least in part, that's what your position is kind of working towards. Is that correct?
In part. I don't personally believe, and this, even with my position, it is still my personal belief that we don't ever want to try and dictate how a monarch handles any situation. That's not my place.
It's really hard to set a precedent because the next monarch can just say, "No, I'm not gonna do that."
Right.
Well, we can be there for guidance, but again, that lack of directive option. I don't want to ever even having had conversations with monarchs on numerous occasions regarding online activities, it's never something where I want to take a directive stance.
Mm-hmm.
I'll present information, and if they ask for an opinion, I'll offer it, but I don't want to ever try and tell a monarch how to do their job.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the other thing too is even if you did, and even if the monarch was willing to cooperate, it almost never the same situation doesn't occur twice. I've had plenty of people reach out to me and say, "Hey, here's how I handled this when it came up in my kingdom." Or, "Hey, here's how I handled this when it came up in Winter's Edge and it happened, 2 years ago." Okay, great. Well, the circumstances here are a little different and I don't know that I can do it that way. Like, again, every scenario is a little bit different. So even setting a precedent seems extremely difficult, except in the most obvious cases.
Yeah, I mean, wholeheartedly agree. The position where I was directly targeted, I actually obviously personally had to stay out of. I had somebody else carry that one forward because,
Right.
You
well, yeah,
recuse yourself. Am I using that word correctly? You
yes,
recuse yourself
Yeah.
from the situation.
and that is something that the moderators will tend to do if it's something they are particularly attached to. Is they, I have a team. I had a team who were able to say, "Hey, this is something that's a little close to home to me. I don't think I can remain unbiased here. I'm going to step out of this one." Or if it's a thread that they were heavily involved in, the same goes, "Hey, I'm involved in this directly. I'm going to step back. I'm not going to be involved in the decision making process for anything with this particular thread." If I were still moderating and stepping into the Kingdom Monarch role, if it was involving somebody in the IM, I would not be involved as a mod. But if they wanted to bring it to me as a monarch, you know, being able to take that step back and saying, "Hey, I probably shouldn't handle this here."
Right. Well, and that's a quality move too. It's the easier thing to do is to stay involved, right? And to argue with the person directly and be very upfront. That seems like the easiest thing to do, but it's not the right thing to do in a lot of cases. So like being able to remove yourself from that situation, step back and say, it's the best way for this to be handled is by a third party is a very, I want to say it's a very adult thing to do, but
Yeah,
we're
that's
all
where I was going
adults.
as well.
But I mean, it's Amtgard.
But-
It is a very grown up move to make. I respect that.
This goes back to that whole, if we could all just be adults, we wouldn't be in this situation sort of thing. It's I don't personally prescribe to that, but you hear that terminology tossed around, right?
Hey, so speaking,
I think that's probably something a lot of the public doesn't realize is in situations like that, the moderator who is, directly involved in the thread isn't going to involve themselves in making decisions as a moderator.
and sometimes even when you tell them that, they don't believe it. But there's a certain amount of like, you're just never going to believe me, but this is how we're handling it. Even if you're not going to trust me on this one, sorry, bud, we're still going to do it the right way, even if you don't like it.
Yeah.
And that's where we get messages to the mod team page, and I'd step in, and that as the lead mod, that was primarily what I was handling. Is I would, for the simple stuff, yeah, I'd be on the boots on the ground moderator, but when things were elevated, that was more often where I was involved and would be the one directly responding to people who would message.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that, particularly as whoever's responding, we make it a point to identify, hey, this is who I am responding, because it's not just one person controlling that page. So knowing who you're dealing with makes a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey,
In fact, I even had a couple of occasions where somebody decided to press it further. So, hey, okay, I'll pass you to the person above me, and they would step in, identify themselves as, hey, I'm the person you're talking with now.
Yeah. So I wanted to touch on, we had brought up guidance and, obviously getting help from other monarchs. And I wanted to shout out, because I know you are stepping in where Promethea is stepping down. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is it Sir Promethea or Dame Promethea? I don't know what they've taken for their title.
I don't remember what they've taken for their formal knightly title, if you will.
Right. Well, either way, she's a stone cold badass. So you've got some awesome guidance. I just want to shout her out. She has been my my sanity check on the circle of monarchs. Sometimes the discussion will get kind of weird, and I'll reach out to Promethea and I'm like, hey, is this insane to you also? Yeah, here's what they're trying to say. Oh, okay, thank you. So You have a fantastic source there for help if she's willing to lend it, but also, what's it like, stepping in where she's stepping down? Is that intimidating, or is that something that you're prepared to do? Is she helping with that? Anything like that?
Honestly, well, one, things still not being official yet. I haven't really had much in the way of discussion as far as transition with Promethea.
Fair.
They're not somebody I'm particularly close to. So they're not somebody I've necessarily gone directly to for advice. I'm sure they'd have a fair bit.
Right.
And during once things are official, I do intend to have some conversations to kind of get up to speed on, because I don't think I have access to all of the COM venues, even with my position. I think there are some things that I'm not seeing.
Mm-hmm.
But I've had conversations with longtime leaders in the game, like Dame Corderellen,
Okay.
and Dame Fiona out of Rivermore. Some long-standing leaders who I've worked with while Cord was serving as the AIBOD president and the executive director, while I had just stepped into, I wasn't even I was serving pro tem as the social media lead. And there was some stuff coming down, and we had some one-on-one discussions with that. So it was somebody that I had talked with, and I'm like, hey, I know he really knows what he's doing, so he's somebody I'm going to specifically reach out to. Same thing with Dame Fiona serving as the executive director now. I'm like, hey, I'm going into this first term. What advice could you give me? Dame Fiona specifically was the one who gave me the advice of your default answer with Aurora recommendation should be yes.
Right.
So while I haven't worked with Promethea specifically, I've gotten some wonderful advice from some very experienced leaders in the game, which I mean, quite thankfully, is a wonderful byproduct of the position I'm in, and the fact that I have dealt with these people regularly.
Mm-hmm.
So it got to the point where, okay, I'm comfortable enough to be able to say, hey, here's what I'm looking at. What would you give me as advice going in?
Yeah. And especially, I don't know how relevant this is going to be. Again, right? Every bit of advice is going to be different because the situation's already different. But the monarchs who have been serving during COVID are probably some of the only monarchs who have actually had player lives in their hand. So that's why I'm hyping her up, because she's been a huge guiding star for me. But all of the guidance you can get is going to be fantastic. But look to those people who have served recently during this time as well, because it's totally different.
100%. I can agree with that. It's something that, because they've been very transparent about, I don't even feel that I have to ask to know how they would handle this situation. Is something that also was asked with our declaration, is how do we intend to handle this? And because Promethea has been very open of, hey, here are the guidelines we're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it very easy to very blatantly say, hey, I intend to follow suit, and it's not something that we're going to take lightly by any means.
Yeah.
Particularly with my monarchy team, there's in our households at least 3 different people that are particularly vulnerable. So it's not something we're going to take lightly. So looking at state guidelines and the CDC guidelines, it's something that I don't necessarily have to establish because it's already there, and they've been very transparent about it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, a little bit of a subject change here. We've been discussing a lot of policy and procedural stuff. We've tried to let the people here in Winter's Edge learn a little bit about what it's like to do big-scale social media and the things that entails. And we touched a little bit about on a little bit about you as an incoming monarch. What I want to kind of shift to is just you as a player. You mentioned that you've been in since 2014 or 15.
Depending on what you qualify as involved, yeah.
Yeah. You've moved around. You've moved around a little bit. You've taken some higher positions and things like that. But that's not a week-to-week you. That's not you at the local park you. What are the types of things up in the Iron Mountains that are really fun to do? Do you have any particular games that stand out that you really love? Are there any fun activities, pre-COVID that Iron Mountains does that other kingdoms may not do that you'd like to hype up?
So, I mean, the obvious big one is Rakis. It is our one annual camping event. Interesting all-theme proposal that will also be voted on this weekend is the bidding process for mid-rains and our winter coronation, which could potentially expand upon that. I don't see other camping events just because in the Iron Mountains seasonally that's not necessarily feasible.
You want to
But-
camp in 2 feet of snow?
No, I don't. Even with the military grade gear that I have been issued and have access to, no, I don't.
Yeah.
But as far as day to day goes, I mentioned it briefly before. I am a relatively Smith oriented player. I like writing games. I like creating monsters. It's not something I've done a whole lot of, even recently before COVID. Some of the leadership stuff and the volunteer positions have taken some time away from that. I am also a chainmail artisan.
Oh, nice.
It's specifically with the focus on jewelry. I understand the armor, but it's not something that interests me as much. I have, to put it not in my own words, I have had some very, very skilled Serpent Knights elsewhere saying that I've had to refrain from referring people to you in the past when it comes to chainmail, and I had to tell her, no, please do. I enjoy sharing that information.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which definitely made me feel a little bit better about my own work. Again, that I haven't talked to them, so I'm not going to dime them out. I try to avoid that when possible, but it's somebody I particularly look up to in the garb world, and having them tell me I would like to be able to refer to people to you, that made me happy. I've done a little bit of pretty much everything when it comes garb wise. I've done some leather work. I've done some garb work, which is decent. My leather work is basic but passable. Basic weapon construction, things like that. But chainmail is really where I reside as an artisan. I've touched weaves that even other chainmail artisans have taken a look at and been like, I don't know that I would want to touch that.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Well, as someone who's worked chainmail, my prayers go out for your hands and eyes.
So I've taught classes regarding chainmail, and one of the big things that I like to push, whether it's armor or jewelry, is the importance of work rest cycles.
Yep. Absolutely.
I haven't done as much chainmail as either of you, but I have definitely done enough and not taken breaks often enough that you end up with the crone claws, because your hands are you were just holding the pliers for too long.
Yeah, or sometimes you're in a fugue state standing in your bathroom because you've taken all the rings off of your shower curtain to do the thing in large scale, so you can then shrink it down with the rings.
That I've heard that, but that's never something I've actually had to do, because for some reason, mail is something that just clicked for me.
Oh, you
Yeah.
lucky bastard. I hate you.
My first project, from first project of let's make a 4-in-1 dice bag to full Persian, which a lot of people struggle with, and I never see why, to I've done flat full Persian 5-in-1. I've done spiral weaves. Like the first actual chain I made was this twin entwined spiral. I can't remember the proper name of it at the moment. To these Persian variant worm weaves. Those are the ones that make people be like, oh damn! Like I don't know. Like just the name alone, if they've heard it, is enough to be like, oh damn.
Yeah.
So
And
no, sorry,
go ahead. Sorry.
No, you finish.
And like the first time I did a worm weave, I did a brief segment in 18 gauge, and I'm like, oh, this is way too chunky, because the thing was probably close to 3/4 of an inch wide, and I am not a fan of chunky work generally.
Mm-hmm.
So I went and did an actual chain in 21 gauge that is outside of Amp Guard, because I am not able to wear this in Amp Guard, obviously. It's my daily wear piece.
So if we had some people in our kingdom that were interested in getting into chainmail, they don't have a lot of exposure to what they need. Do you have any recommendations for them on where they could get some basic tools, what to start
let the
with?
guy save something for his Regent run, man. Come on.
Too late for that. I've actually done a couple of online classes since COVID started. One of
That's
which
fair.
the first probably quarter to third of it was just going over tools. So yes, I have recommendations. I don't want to try and rehash that here and now, because part of it depends on whether they want to look into the armor side or whether they want to look into the jewelry side, whether it's just something they want to try out or it's something they really want to fully invest in. There are options out there. I have the pliers I use for teaching classes that I'll loan out to students, which are, roughly $5 a pair, but give them enough to do the basics. I have the 2 pairs of pliers that I use specifically for armor work. I have another set that I use specifically for fine gauge jewelry work. I have my kind of generic go-to for in between that. The options are out there, and I'll gladly share that information. Like, it's something I have no problem. Anybody who wants to know more about chainmail reaching out and saying, hey, I need advice here. What should I be looking at? With the understanding of they may get the information fire hose effect, though I do try to taper that to the best of my ability.
That's fair. So let me rephrase my question. I think that's really useful, and anyone in Winter's Edge, if they're interested, we'll have some information in the description there. I don't want to put your name on Facebook up there, but we'll find some way that if they have questions, they can get a hold of you.
I'm used to random AmpGuarders adding me and asking questions. I give you my full permission. Please feel free.
Fantastic.
So my let me kind of refocus my question here. If I am brand new to chainmail, I need 2 pairs of pliers and I need rings. Do you have a recommendation and so I'm a total novice. I don't know whether I'm going to like this or not. What would be your recommendation for picking up 2 pair of pliers and some rings just to get started and see if I'm going to like it?
So just to get started and see if you're going to like it, again, I am going to stress, particularly because these pliers are not the greatest in the world, the importance of work rest cycles. Starting out, work for 45, take a break for 15 at a minimum. But you go to Harbor Freight or Menards, if that's a thing where you're at, or Lowe's or whatever, and you are looking for a pair of flat nose pliers, which look almost like a duckbill, and a pair of bent nose pliers. It will look very similar to a pair of needle nose with 45, 60, 90 degree bend in them. But the very important thing with chainmail is that whatever you get, it cannot have teeth. That interior surface needs to be as smooth as possible.
Okay. To not mar the rings.
And then,
yeah, you get all those jagged looking.
Exactly. And then with rings, there are a few different options. If you're just starting out, you're probably not wanting, you're not looking at particularly high quality. You want cheap rings just to be able to play around. I would advocate the Ring Lord because generally they do have the best prices, though I have seen some quality issues with that.
Yeah.
So if you're wanting to get into anodized aluminum and the colors and all the pretty things that go with that, there is an inherent risk. And depending on the budget you're working with, there might be some other options I recommend. But just to play around and kind of get a feel for it, and for armor in particular, the Ring Lord is a good way to go. If you're not looking for colored rings, you're just looking for basic aluminum to play around with jewelry and learning some weaves like that, it's a good option. But once you start getting into some of the color work, I've had batches where I've come in and I was making a knight's chain for somebody being knighted at Rakkus, and I probably threw out as many rings as I was able to keep into a piece just because the coating started flaking on me as I was working the rings, and I don't overwork my rings in the process.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and with an anodized coating, it shouldn't be possible. I mean, I guess it's possible, but it's really unlikely.
Right.
So what's a weave you would recommend?
Oh,
So what's a
that's
weave you would
loaded
recommend? Sorry, he had to hit the vape, and so he's coughing now.
That's a loaded question.
I hear Byzantine put forth as a good starter weave. Would you agree with that?
It's a decent one. if I have someone who, like, for someone who doesn't know if they're interested or not, yes, Byzantine is a great option. For someone who is established, yeah, this is something I want to get into, I have a list of like 6 weaves that I would recommend. Hey, learn these first.
That's fair. That's fair.
Some other options, if you're on the armor side of it, Byzantine's not going to do much good. You could go learn European 4 and 1, straight up.
Yeah.
Then progress, you could learn European 6 and 1 because that'll give you the dense weave. You know, you can start playing around with some of that. I personally, as far as sheet weaves go, European 4 and 1 is my least favorite weave in existence because the edges look absolutely horrible and unfinished.
Yeah, one of the things that you get with the denser weaves like 6 and 1 is you don't get the edges that have sort of the in out jaggedness to them that come with the spaces from one ring, a row that was kicked over to the left and then another one to the right. Is that what you're talking about?
No.
Okay.
I mean, yes and no. With European weaves in general, I find that the edges look unfinished because they only have half of their connections and it doesn't really line up very well.
Mm-hmm.
I find if you're going to use a European weave as the sheet base, particularly for armor, you want to edge it, meaning the last row, maybe 2, in half Persian, because it gives it a more finished edge.
Okay.
That's what I was gonna say. Is a half Persian makes a good, almost like a hem. Like if you think of it like a fabric tunic, it does.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it keeps
I don't
the
know.
edge from looking raw. I've
Like
never done that when I've made 4 and 1 shirts because it's a pain in the ass. But I also understand it looking unfinished.
Well,
I know exactly where you're coming from.
Most of the time when I see someone that's finally finishing up a 4 and 1 shirt, they just hate the world. They're done with everything. They don't ever want to touch this again, and they're going to have to because it's going to throw rings.
Work, rest, balance.
Right.
Oh, 100%. It's going to throw rings. There are some methods out there to help prevent that because usually the most common blowout spot's the armpit, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned a while ago, Cabbage, the fact that it's almost like a tunic.
Yeah.
You can draft it even further, closer similarities to a tunic. You can put actual gussets in the armpit of chainmail.
And for those viewers that may not have ever heard the term, a gusset would be some piece of fabric that would extend that. So you see it, if you've ever taken martial arts or something, they'll have it in like the crotch of the pants or something like that.
Usually shaped like a diamond. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
When you're weaving chainmail, you're making essentially fabric out of metal. All those options are available to you. You know, you don't necessarily have the ability to curve a seam, if you will, but you can work with angles like that and produce very similar effects, which help to ensure the longevity of the piece. But it does require some extra work.
That makes sense. So you mentioned Rakkus earlier. That's one of the big events that you guys have, or the big event that you guys have. And you know, to tie this back into one of our earlier episodes, listeners, Rakkus is the event that Rabbit was talking about way back on episode 6 when he mentioned that he goes out west to visit some of his fighting company that is out there. Rakkus is the event that they were referring to then. So I also have been a couple of times with my fighting company. It was a great experience every time. We've had a whole lot of fun out there. The disc golf story was one of the ones that King Cabbage mentioned earlier. Was one of the ones. We pulled up to, I don't even remember what year it was, 2015 or so. That we were pulling in, we were walking down to start playing disc golf because where Rakkus was taking place at that time, there was a world famous disc golf course. And Sir Leaf happened to be pulling in at the time and said, "Hey, where are you guys going with your discs?" And we're going to hit the disc golf course. Like, there's no disc golf course here. My kingdom has events here all of the time. No, man, it's a world famous one. And he parks, never even goes to the ditch field. He's already in his garb, grabs his discs out of the back of his car and heads with us to go play disc golf for 5.5 hours.
Mid to late June, for those who are curious, and this has come up in private discussion, not so much in public, because we don't know necessarily when these restrictions are going to be lifted. I am not necessarily sure that that's going to be a 2021 occurrence because by the time we know whether or not it'd be clear, I don't think there's enough time to fairly expect somebody to be able to plan and execute event.
Yeah, I've
Right.
already canceled events as late as February.
So, I mean, but generally speaking, mid to late June, it is a good time. However, start hydrating 2 to 3 days before you come out, or the altitude can and will kick your ass.
Oh.
Because we are up, depending on what site and all that, up at least 5,000 feet, potentially over 6, if
Gee.
not more.
And for anyone from Winter's Edge here who's planning on going too, one of the things that we learned that altitude does to weapons is
they expand.
it causes the weapons to expand. So we all had what is the ripstop covers?
Mhm.
We all had the ripstop covers at the time, and our weapons, of course, as we went up, it caused expansion, and so we got up to the top, and they were having a jugging tournament. There was a big jugging tournament there this year, or this particular year, and the Triads, my fighting company, is going up against the warlords that had fielded a team. And before we fought, we had to pull them aside and was like, "Hey, man, before we start, here's our weapons. I want you to feel them. We didn't make duck sticks. This isn't like a pain thing. They've literally expanded so much that they were starting to burst our covers. And it was like being hit with a brick. It was just horrible. So I say all of that to let people know that when you come back down to Tennessee, the weapons are just dust. There is nothing left of them. The expansion, the beating that they took while they were up there, and when they came back. So don't take any illegal sticks up there, please. Empire of the Iron Mountains does not want any of their people being hit by illegal weapons. But if you've got a stick that's it's 70% of the way through with its life, and you're going to have to change it sometime soon, anyways. Yeah, maybe that's a good one to take.
All right. Well, with that, Flo's taking us straight into story time. So it's your turn now. We always do this with our guests. I mean, what's your most memorable moment in Amped Guard? It doesn't even have to be a funny story, but what stands out to you as your shining moment or Amped Guard's shining moment for you?
Oh man,
Always the toughest question.
It is.
the first time I left my little shire was for a winter coronation going from Cheyenne, Wyoming to Denver, Colorado. And winter coronation, like most of Winter's Edge, will never experience because it was what is ordinarily, okay, for reference, it's 100 miles. So ordinarily, hour and a half drive.
Mm-hmm.
2.5 hour drive through the Interstate 25 corridor in near whiteout conditions.
Gee. What he's
We get
referring
down there.
to for people in Tennessee is this thing called snow. We haven't had any since you've all been adults, but it used to be this white stuff that fell from the sky that would stick and cause things like school outages.
In Tennessee, the joke is if it starts to snow at all, like if you get a dusting of snow that doesn't even stick, they cancel school. The grocery stores are out of bread and eggs and milk and everything else. I imagine you guys are more equipped for it.
Yeah.
Oh no, I get it. I spent 7 months in training in Arkansas when I was learning to be a crew member on C-130s. They had a half an inch, if that, and the base was closed for 3 days. And I'm like, looked at the guys at the dorm, like, well, what do you want to go do now?
So sorry for
one of the
interrupting.
NCOs. Oh no, one of the NCOs in charge of the dorm looked at me like I was crazy. I'm like, ma'am, I'm from Wyoming. I learned to drive in this shit when I was 16.
Yeah.
But so we get down to Denver, and it was me and one other individual from my park who I don't think is actually active anymore. But I had, I hadn't hit that point where I said I started getting really active yet, so I had nothing garb-wise. I had a legal stick, and I had messaged down before I came down there that, hey, I would like something to be able to wear to court. So the emperor at the time, Sir Augustus, who was not a knight at the time, but is now a knight of the sword and crown, said, "Hey, I think I can throw something together for you." He gave me my first tabard and something I could use as a belt over it. So I was able to attend court in some sort of garb. It was freezing. I was in heavy winter coat fighting, and people started building, these knee to thigh high snow walls in the middle of the battle game field. Because why not?
Do you guys follow the ice ball rule where the wizards can just make a snowball and hit you with it?
Occasionally that has come up. It's not particularly common because that would be, 6 months out of the year.
Right.
But, I get there and first time out of my park, and there's all these people that when I get into a hobby, I get into research mode. So these people that I have heard about or read about on the AMP wiki that all of a sudden I'm meeting and running into, and like, oh, this person's the person who's serving as our champion. This person is our regent, and just complete sense of awe and wonder that you get when a newbie first steps into that arena, experienced cranked to 11. And then we get to court, and awards are handed out, and we see the change of leadership, and it's Dame Corderellin who was taking over as emperor. And if you've had the pleasure of meeting Dame Corderellin, you would know that, especially from a newbie's eyes, the aura he presses out is just impressive. Like the sense of poise, and I know exactly what I'm doing here, leaves an impression. On top of Dame Casca receiving her second belt that night. And then driving back home with this complete sense of wonder. And thinking to myself, that could be me someday. And now here we are, 5.5 years. 5 years just about, exactly, with me stepping into that role as emperor.
Yeah, it's a really cool journey. It's I think that a lot of people have a story about the first time that they saw someone knighted, or the first big court that they went to, or something like that. Those are really defining moments. But then, especially in the situation that you were in, where you have, it was a struggle to get there, and then it's a struggle to get back, or at least by Tennessee standards, a whiteout situation is a struggle. But this also then provides a chance for everybody to talk on the way back and say, oh, what was your favorite part? What did you see?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
plus you take those stories back to your shire.
Yeah, right.
And you can now tell them about this awesome thing you said. Like, word of mouth is a really powerful tool because they can't see it directly, so there's still some mystery to it, but it's a person you trust saying, I saw this awesome thing. So it sounds too good to be true, but buddy you trust is telling you that it happened.
Right.
You want to believe it, and you do. That's always, like, I love it when people come back and say, oh, we had a vigil for, Sir Kazan, and there were 100 people there, and there were candles, and it's like, that sounds so fucking cool.
Yeah, right.
Really?
But as far as field stories go, it was definitely the first time I hit a kingdom court day. It wasn't Rakkus, but it was one of our other courts, which are usually single day affairs, as a 6th level druid. Druid is by far my primary class. And being able to step in, and because I get into that research mode I mentioned earlier, having the knowledge of people who'd been in the game in some cases a fair bit longer than I have, just because I spent the time reading and understanding and theory crafting druid lists, stepping in and having what I felt was a major impact, definitely a bit of an empowering moment. I remember specifically, I was down at what is now my current park, was not at the time, at Dark Moon, and I see this barbarian, and there's 3 of us with bows, You have an archer to my left, a scout to my right, and me as druid, obviously running a ranger list. And he rushes me. And my first thought is, well, that was probably the least effective option he could have rushed. Because I'm just going to step for him. And having that realization for somebody who I know for a fact had actually been in the game longer than me, and I talked to him after that because needless to say he died horribly. And be like, hey, if you see a line of bowmen, the one in the brown sash is probably your last choice in target.
Yeah, and for people in Winter's Edge, we've had people on before, Teflon in particular.
Paragon Druid.
Yeah, and mentioned that Druid is his favorite class because it can be anything, right? He can play it in any way that he wants. Yeah, I love stuff like that, man. I love hearing stories like that. They're fun. Have you guys been doing any of the more competitive battle game type games like
Phoenix League?
Yeah, and something like that. Yeah, is that something that you find fun?
We did run a tournament at Rackus last year, and it ended up delayed to later in the event due to some weather. Well, I can't even say abnormalities. It tends to happen at Rackus. We had some hard rain hit during the event, and I was actually one of the reeves for it. I may have made some people unhappy with that because I had tried to speak up to a player a couple of times making a call and they didn't hear me, so I just flat out called them dead.
Respect your reeves, people. All right.
Yeah.
I think it may have been a little too much of a jump in my part. I'll go ahead and admit I don't think he heard me the first couple times because he was sorely outnumbered at the time. But it gets to the point where I gotta make the call, and you're not listening. It just happened to be a very inopportune moment for something like that to happen because they were the only player standing, and I had to call them dead.
Right.
So we've had it. It hasn't gained a huge amount of popularity here. I can say I mentioned theory crafting earlier. For those that are unfamiliar with the term, it's you're playing through scenarios in your head, trying to write, in this case, a spell list that would be a meta tactic, the most effective tactic available based on the scenario. So you have to know that scenario beforehand. And I've done some theory crafting with Phoenix League, but it's not something we've done a whole lot of. But it does completely change how you have to approach writing a list. I can't say I'd be against it showing up, because that's another opportunity to kind of flex class skills in a competitive environment,
right? Versus
just your standard field battle game. But I can't necessarily say it's something that I wish for either. I personally know in a competitive environment like that, I have some very negative tendencies. I am naturally a very competitive person, and that can bring out some negative qualities in me. Part of the reason I'm not a fan of fighting tournaments in general as a participant. I don't mind reaving in them. I have some experience running them, but I'm less likely to participate in a fighting tournament. But it for the vast majority of people, I would be in favor of seeing it more often.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we're just about to the end of our time here. I want to end on a positive note. Guys, go to Rackus when it starts opening back up. Visit the Empire of the Iron Mountains. It's a great place. There's a lot of good people up there. Do you have anything that you want to leave our audience with? Winter's Edge hasn't done a whole lot of travel as a kingdom. And so one of the things that we want to do is get people familiar with all of the different kingdoms outside of ours and some of the things that they do. What's something that we could leave them with as kind of a teaser for your kingdom in particular?
If you ever get the opportunity to travel to the Iron Mountains, I can promise you some of the most beautiful views you will ever experience in Amgard. I can stand in the middle of our normal park field and see mountain views that it's beyond comparison. I mean, I talked about earlier how I literally work halfway up the side of a mountain. My field views, the Rocky Mountains. I mean, there's not really much other way to say it. There's multiple 14,000-foot peaks.
Oh wow, holy crap!
You know, so to say that it offers some of the most scenic vistas available to Amgarters is not an exaggeration.
Yeah, I'll
So
second
if that is something you enjoy, please come visit. And honestly, yes, I am highly biased as a member of the IM, but as a moderator, and having seen, well, literally every kingdom's Facebook group,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot less problems here than most anywhere else I've seen.
Yeah, I can echo that for certain. When it comes to at least the few folks I've had to interact from the IM, it seems like the attitudes are very similar to what they are here in Winter's Edge. So, if you get along well with folks in Winter's Edge, you'll probably get along great in Iron Mountain as well.
And knowing that there are some military installations in Winter's Edge as well as in IM, if you end up stationed in Colorado Springs, I am one of the military members present in Colorado Springs. So if you're coming this way, reach out, let us know. We can give you an idea of what to expect, and we'd be happy to have you out.
Yeah, that's a great resource to have. Well, that's a great note to end on. I think we're going to wrap it up here. We try to contain things to 2 hours. Maybe we'll follow up after you've had your term as monarch and see how traumatized you are. But
that'd be fun.
I think you're in good hands, and I think you're in a great kingdom. So we are going to roll out here. Everyone, make sure to like on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube. Make sure to give the video a thumbs up wherever you happen to listen. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and I want to thank Lord Eronim Faitzhand as well for joining us. Bye, everybody.